This is my life when I walk into a client. Hi, my name's Drew Sorrell. I'm one of the guys that's going to help you out with your litigation. I'm going to parachute in and start talking to your IT folks, and this is what I get. So tell me a little bit about you and tell me a little bit about your business. And it's my job to take this and to move it to the naked woman. And there's a little bit of a overwrite there, but that's the Nude Descending Staircase by Marcel Duchamp. And you want to try and push them from the Jackson Pollock into the I'm a little more organized and things are starting to make a better picture, I'm starting to understand what you're doing. And then hopefully before you get into the meat and potatoes of your litigation, and I mean this sometimes as early as, hey, lawyer, we think we're going to get sued. What should we do? And the old school answer is, have you been sued? And they would say, no. Well, call me back when you get a lawsuit. We don't do that anymore. In fact, when they say, we think we might get sued, if you tell them, call me back later, you've probably committed malpractice. So you want to move them, sometimes even way before suit, to this stage. We've got all your, and if you know anything about liberal arts and art, this is pointillism. This is done by somebody taking a colored instrument and making little dots. So it's kind of like a TV if you got really close to it. The point, again, liberal arts, the point is you want to organize their data with each one of those little points being the data. So you have a nice pretty picture so that you can present your case to the judge. And when you're asked to produce stuff, it makes sense. This is the theme for today. All right. So first question. Client calls you and says, we've got a problem. In addition to figuring out what's going on and what the problem is, your question should be, who's on my team? Give me a little license. These are intended to be a little bit more interesting. So you figure out the who. And you figure out what their best album was, and that's kind of a digression, so I won't get into it. But you figure out the who. Who at the client is going to be responsible? Now, here's what sometimes happens. Okay, client, I need to talk to somebody about an IT issue. I want to know where your data is and what's going on. Oh, okay. There's this help desk guy or girl, and they're going to help you. The help desk guy or girl probably actually knows where the bodies are buried, but doesn't have the authority to get done what you most of the time are going to need to get done. So what you don't want to do is say, dear client, I reject that. What you do want to say is, that's good. Can I also have somebody who's a little bit higher up the food chain, and you do this in a nice lawyerly way, and you say, I need somebody who can make decisions and actually require people to do things. I need someone with authority. So I need authority coupled with knowledge. And that's at the client. Part two, your team. You're the lawyer. Your question is, am I doing it by myself? Am I going to have people helping me? And one of those things that you have to ask is, am I going to have the time to do this right? Sometimes the answer to that is, no, I'm going to end up half-assing it. That's a bad answer. You want to always whole-ass all your work, okay? So if you can't do it yourself, you need to find somebody who's got the time to devote to this because it's a big project. And I'm assuming we're talking about big litigation. And sometimes you need multiple people because you want the primary person who's going to either be the person running the case and understands all of the, this is how we're going to do this and this is our game plan. You also want the person, and sometimes, again, some people will wear multiple hats, but you want the person who also understands the e-discovery process from the beginning to the end and how all this fits together. That person, hopefully, is organized. And we'll get to that in just a minute. And so you build your team, person who's running the show, who's really running the litigation, sometimes they're the same person. Person who's organized is going to be the scribe, is going to be the go-to and get things done and understands where everything is. You need your client team that I already discussed, and sometimes you need some other people. So included in that is frequently you're going to want a technical person. And by technical person, I mean somebody who is very knowledgeable of how to actually extract data from systems. And you want all of these people in the room at the same time before the first shot is fired, if possible. Now, here's the other thing you want to do. Take your team, take the who, put them in the room, and make sure everybody's talking about what the case is about. Because what happens often is you get the mushroom effect. What happens? Well, you guys go handle that. I'm going to keep you in the dark, and I'm going to feed you a bunch of crap, and you're going to grow slowly. But what would really be better is if you kept them in the light and everybody knew what the issues in the case were. So if you educate your team, you're going to get a lot better product out of them. The other part of that is that before you know what to pull out and what is important and what to preserve, you have to understand what the case is about. So instructions to people who are helping you with e-discovery, like go find out what's relevant. That's impossible. Because I can't tell you what's relevant. I can't certainly tell you what's likely to lead to relevant evidence unless I know what the case is about. And then I have to interface with the client. We have to have a big powwow with the client, with the whole team, to understand where everything is. So that's the what. The what are you going to do? You're going to sit down, you're going to talk about what you're going to do, literally. Okay, we got our team, the case is about this, this is how we're going to handle this, our defense is this, or if we're prosecuting, we're going to prosecute the case this way. But everybody needs to know what that is. You also need to know what the e-discovery piece of it is. So this is our problem. It's an IP case. It's a patent case. The relevant patent documents are likely going to be in this repository. They're not going to be in that repository. And oh, by the way, we just did a system refresh, and we've got 4 servers sitting in the back room, and they're just sitting there, but we're getting ready to trash them. Can we do that? Those are the kind of conversations you want to have. Part of getting organized. Big litigation. This is not how you get organized in big litigation. Sometimes this is how you get organized in big litigation. And this is just literally a spreadsheet. You want to have, and let me say this. I'm agnostic as to what device you use. Just whatever you do, make sure that everybody can access it. By everybody, I mean people that need to access it. And make sure that it's not subject to getting lost, or the dog eating it, and that it's also something that you can make changes to relatively easy. Because what you'll see happen is if you put together this kind of document at the beginning of the litigation, it all looks so simple and neat. And conceptually, it is all simple and neat. But when you get into it and you start asking questions like, okay, John Doe has these physical items. And then you're going to have a problem that John Doe calls you back and says, I need this physical item back. And you're going to have to know what happened to the physical item. And you're going to have to make a change to what the physical item says. Or John Doe tells you initially, I've got this physical item, goes and looks in his garage or wherever it happens to be. I can't find it. And so you want to go back and make a note on that. My point simply is you can do all kinds of changes to this relatively easily, but even at a spreadsheet, it's going to be difficult to use by the end of it because it's going to have lines and notes going everywhere. This sometimes is a better choice. And this is just this is off the shelf, an access database. Sometimes with big litigation, the inventory controls, the who have you talked to, who have you interviewed, what information have you gathered from them, what electronics have you gotten from them, what electronically stored information, it makes sense to put it into a database. When you start getting to database level litigation, this requires a lot of planning. So you need to sit down and actually build your database first and understand what the information is going to be and deal with it that way. Nicely, to some extent, there are now e-discovery packages that are increasingly putting into some of those software packages and software abilities the ability to track what is important and what's going on at the front end of the intake case. So again, it kind of depends on what you're doing and what software you're using as to what you need to do to keep track. Anybody know Bear Grylls? He's the dude, former SAS, jumps out of helicopters, and he goes and lives in Africa for a week with just a matchstick and, I don't know, hope. If you remember back to your undergrad days, you remember accounting? FIFO, LIFO, he's the YOLO guy. Anyway, what I'm getting at with this is I was talking about physical items. Here's the thing with physical items. What you don't want to do is say, John Doe, hey, you've got this document, you've got this system, and we're just going to take your system. And I'm just going to take it, and I'm going to walk out and put it in my car, take it back to my law firm, set it in the back seat for a couple weeks where it's hot. Uh-oh, I was in an accident, and it goes flying through my windshield. You need to have a procedure in place if you're going to actually take, if you, the attorney or paralegal, are going to take physical items, think about how you're going to do that. Now, best practices. If you've ever done criminal work, you want to be the police. You want to take and you want to grab your item, you want to put it in some kind of collection bag, you want to sign off on it, and so you've got a receipt where you're taking it from the person and you give them their receipt, and you get the document or the item, and you get sign off that they've given it to you and what the details are. And then you want that to be logged in at some kind of central repository so that you know where that item is at all times and who's accessed it. Because, and Adam will talk about this in a little bit, one of the things that you have to do is you have to establish its admissibility. And hypothetically, if you get a really squirrely attorney on the other side and they say, well, how do you know that something didn't change between now and then? And your response is, but it was in the back of my car for 2 weeks. That's not the best way to start off on that. So keep an eye on it. The other thing just to bear in mind, this has been known to happen on accident. Roof leaks, fires, somebody cleans the office, IT decides that they're going to go through and look at all the deployed electronics and they're going to pull them out of your office and get rid of them because they think they're old, when in fact they're evidence. So have them in a place that's preferably waterproof, fireproof, and safe. Or better yet, if you're working with a vendor and they have those facilities, have them handle it, because that way it becomes their problem. Now, I want you all to think about litigation like you're a 12-year-old girl. Because what I want you to do is keep a diary. Dear diary, today I met with my first client, and it was wonderful, and I feel good about it. And this is what we talked about. Oh, love. But what I want you to do is have a diary, and I want you to put down on a daily basis what you did, what the decisions were, and why you made them. And it can be linear, or it can be any way that makes sense to you, so long as somebody else can come to it and understand. But this diary, at the beginning of litigation, will start off at roughly 1 page, whatever the system is that you're using. And by the end of the big litigation, you'll have volumes that you can walk through. And you can literally go back. So when you get down here, Judge, they've moved to compel on this particular issue. I have no idea why the hell back over here we did this thing. But if you've got a diary, nicely you can say, oh look, the second production. I remember now in the second production that we had this issue related to what dates we were going to use to call data with. We decided we use this date. And the reason we use this date is because that's what we agreed to in the 26F conference, or it made no logical sense to do it otherwise, or we decided we would use the access date and not the creation date, and the reason is. But then you've got this diary that says and walks you through all the reasoning that went into it. So that's your diary, and every time you do anything significant, you should put an entry. Oh, sorry. Who's this guy? Come on. Thank you. Tickle Me Elmo. A room full of attorneys and paralegals who just said Tickle Me Elmo. Tickle Me Elmo. If you don't have a tickle system, you should. And it can be a doll, which is kind of fun. If you've ever seen these things, they make you laugh. But you should have a tickle system. The tickle system should make you follow up. If for nothing else, you should have a tickle system that follows up on when your litigation hold, the first one went into place. And it should tell you, depending on the facts and circumstances of the case and what the data looks like and how fast the data gets overwritten on a routine basis, et cetera, it should remind you, go out and talk to these people and remind them, warm the litigation hold. It should also have a system set in place for things that are issues that you need to follow up on. And there should be people that are looking at this and keeping up to date on what's going on. So not just you, the attorney, but the paralegals that are helping. Take a look at what the tickle system says, and everybody remember this is what needs to be done. Now, if you stay in this situation, you're going to have Rule 11 problems. And this happens. When you read a case about somebody getting sanctioned, it's because they left the entire data set, I'll call it, in this situation throughout, and they flew by the seat of their pants. They didn't get organized. Nobody knew what was going on. They didn't keep track of what they were doing or why. This will make you happy. Because this, you can pull out your diary, you can make sure you know where your data is. Your data is not going to get spoliated on accident because you forgot to look for it. You'll have sat down with your client and you'll know all the ins and outs of their system. You'll know when they've done a refresh. You'll not say to the judge, we'll produce this, having forgotten that the client said, we don't have data going past 2005 because of X, Y, and Z. If you get organized and you keep track, it's going to keep you out of trouble.